Hi, my name's Phil. I like to talk about politics. In this video, I'd like to discuss another insane plan by the Orange One to put his political career ahead of the lives of Americans. Yes, I know I may need to be more specific there. I'm not actually referring to his weaponising of supporters. I don't think we've really any need to speculate on that one. If we want to know how that one turns out, we just have to go back nearly a century to what happened in Central Europe when the same thing was happening. Now, this one is on his pushing for a COVID vaccine to be released before the presidential election, which of course means doing so before it has been thoroughly tested. But first, if you'd like to be notified of daily news and politics, please subscribe to the channel and click the bell notification icon. So, the suggestion coming out of America from the head of the FDA is that the go-ahead may well be given to a COVID vaccine before trials have been completed. There is a lot of talk of skipping out on the phase 3 of the trials, which is where you have large-scale trials on people to test for efficacy, which is essentially that the vaccine does what you want it to do. Now, the head of the FDA, Dr. Hahn, said that this would not be a political decision, it would be a scientific, medical and data decision. Right, because, you know, this process of testing and trials for new pharmaceuticals, for which the vaccine should be subjected to, is a scientific system. So the scientific view is that you complete the accepted system of trials before approving the vaccine. The medical view is the same. And the data view is that, well, you need data to form a data view, and not going through with the stage 3 of the trials means you have no data. So there is no data view either. So it will absolutely be a political decision. Unsurprising, really, when Trump has been leaning on the FDA for some time to rush through a vaccine. But the bottom line is that, you know, if you create a COVID vaccine, I mean, we are already rushing it through, or fast-tracked is maybe a better way of doing it, because that is like rushing it through, but with some sort of safety margin. You know, I remember some months ago when in the UK, Boris Johnson was coming under fire for his response to COVID. It was all unravelling. What he'd said at the start of the crisis, he was having to completely go back on. We were hitting our peak, completely under fire, and the Daily Express came to his rescue. They can always be relied upon to support the most insane of governments. Quite happy to stick up for Boris Johnson. And they were tantalising us with, you know, a vaccine that would have, you know, we would have vaccinated 1 million people by September. There was a decent chance of this. I think there were a few other papers that tried this as well. And you can understand why they would want to do that, because the government's COVID response was undeniably crap. Absolutely appalling. So what do you do to distract people from it? You say, okay, well, we're going to get this vaccine quite soon. So then you might get people who will see that the government are making a mess of it, go, but the vaccine will save our blushes. But, you know, they've gone rather quiet at the moment because it is now September. There's no sign of a vaccine. You know, it's hardly surprising. It was actually impossible. It was actually impossible. And I don't just mean unlikely, but actually impossible at the time. Experts were saying, well, it'd be a year or a year and a half, really, because you've got to factor, even if, let's say we've actually developed the vaccine right now. Let's say the Oxford labs have come up trumps and they've got what will work. But we need to know that it works, and the time taken to test, even with a fast-track system, and then because as soon as you've got it and tested it and approved it, the country isn't vaccinated. You've then got to produce millions of shots, tens of millions of shots of the vaccine, because you've got to test most of the population, you've got to vaccinate most of the population, rather. So you've then got the time taken to administer it. Huge. An optimistic outlook would be more likely September 2021, and I think that's an optimistic outlook. There is no safe way to get a vaccine out there in time for this November's election, even if the horse or horses that the US government were backing come up trumps. No pun intended. Dr. Hahn argued that the benefits outweigh the risks in a public health emergency. Now, here's the thing. When it comes to pharmaceuticals, obviously, yes, there is a risk-reward calculation. Most pharmaceuticals, even ones that go through the normal procedures and are approved for general use, they still have to be prescribed by doctors because they're dangerous. They can have a significant risk of serious side effects. But if it's a cure or it alleviates something very terminal, something very terrible, then what you would consider an acceptable risk of serious harm, well, you can go higher. After all, if the illness is definitely going to kill you in a few months, but the cure might let you live for another 5 years, then you will take the greater risk of it being harmful. But a vaccine is a little bit different. A vaccine is used on healthy people. It's not a cure, it's preventative. You can't use a pharmaceutical on hundreds of millions of healthy people if there's a significant risk of it causing serious harm. That risk-reward calculation goes out the window. You can't say that it's... I mean, what are you going to say? If we end up killing 200,000 people with this vaccine, then it's fine because it works for everyone else. Well, that's round about the number that COVID's killed in America so far. In fact, it's not even quite that high, is it? So no, it's not. You can't just make that judgment. But of course, Trump doesn't care about that. He doesn't need the vaccine even to work. Doesn't need it to work. You might imagine this is a situation of the president rolling the dice and going, well, it might work and then I'll look brilliant. I'll take the chance. That's not what this is. He doesn't need it to work. It doesn't matter if it works or not. The vaccine could be the bleach he wants to inject into everyone. In fact, what he really wants is just to be able to announce that it's released, it's approved, I would think, right at the end of October, the last week of October, let's say. That way there's just enough time to get the news out there that Trump's come up trumps and the vaccine is on its way and everything's going to be fine pretty soon and give him a boost in the polls. But not enough time for people to see how this untested vaccine actually works in practice. And then there's the wider reputational damage that this could do to medicine. So can't have escaped too many people's notice that the United States is host to a large anti-vaxxer movement. I mean, we have our own homegrown nutters in this country as well. Some of them were protesting in London this weekend, shoulder to shoulder with the British Fascist Party, who were allowed by police somehow to unfurl their flags without interference. These are flags that had not been openly seen in this country many decades. Not really since the Nazis were seen in this country for what they were. It was the equivalent of unfurling the swastika in Berlin. Maybe not quite so raw in this country, but it's the same thing. But anyway, those anti-vaxxers in America will already do enough damage when a reliable vaccine becomes available. They will persuade large numbers of Americans to forego it, risking the potential for a real herd immunity to develop, a safe one. And this is in a world where vaccinations have saved countless lives every year and have helped wipe out microbial scourges around the world. Imagine how their movement would be boosted if a genuinely harmful vaccine were ever approved. Undeniably harmful. You would never shut them up again. And there'd be no arguing that, well, no, this one was only because it was approved by a homicidal head of government. They think that all vaccines are the results of government or deep state plots. No, one can only hope that Hahn is not as insane as his statements would suggest. That he's saying it just to keep Trump quiet. He's getting Trump to believe, oh, yes, of course, if we've got a promising one, yeah, I'm quite willing to forego this if you think so, Mr. President. But he'll nonetheless not be allowed to consider any vaccine safe to be rolled out on a large scale before phase 3 have been completed. He'll point to concerns raised during phase 2. If Trump says, oh, yeah, this one's gone through phase 2, is it looking all right? You go, it's not really looking great. I mean, we'll see. We'll see in phase 3. It's not looking good at the moment, Mr. President. But if the orange one gets it into his cavernous head that the announcement of a COVID vaccine a week before the election is the way to help him shore up support for re-election, then the FDA will come under intense pressure to give way, I would have thought. Trump does not seem to me to accept any boundaries when it comes to getting what he wants. He doesn't just violate all social norms. I genuinely do not believe that he thinks that there is any limit to his own behaviour. And what also worries me is that the United States is not at all getting a handle on the pandemic. The worse the situation gets, the bigger a panacea a vaccine would be. And the situation is likely to be considerably worse as October rolls grimly on. And the suggestions are, well, let us say you're getting to the point where we're towards the end of September now. And polling suggests that Biden is on course to win. And I will point out there are credible voices suggesting that he is not right now and that people are getting carried away, the same people who got carried away over Clinton. So I would be a little bit careful, a bit wary of what you may be seeing in some polls. But let's say the picture is looking grim for Trump. Then surely his insistence on the approval of anything will reach fever pitch. Approve whatever you have may be his call. And he won't care about the consequences because for him there are no consequences. He has gotten away with everything he has done in the last 4 years. Everything. I mean, in the UK, where we've got our own bargain basement Trump, he's of course tried to follow the Orange One's lead and continues to do so. But he has been pulled back by others in his party from some of the worst excesses of his behaviour. They've not yet completely sacrificed their souls in the way that, elected Republicans have, though they are uncomfortably close. But Trump has genuine absolute power. The only thing really potentially stopping him is this election coming up now. It's the only way to stop him setting fire to more of his own country. And if Trump sees the vaccine as the difference between 4 more years of no challenge in his life, no challenge to what he wants to do, and facing a serious criminal trial, then I'm sure there's nothing he will stop at to get that vaccine approved and to get that news out there days before the election, come what may, regardless. And I wonder if America actually has anything at all in place to actually stop him doing so. Maybe some Americans could let me know. But anyway, those are my thoughts. Let me know yours in the comments below. I hope you found the video interesting. If you did, don't forget to click the like button. And if you'd like to support the channel further, please also click the Patreon link for details. And until next time, I'll see you later.